I've been here in New York this week, and I'll be here in a couple more weeks. And I keep telling everybody on the staff, get out of New York. Why? Because of who the next mayor is going to be. The circus show of an election, once that's all over here in New York, New Yorkers may be begging for their benevolent dictator, Bloomberg, to return. You thought he was bad? I think there's a possibility the whole election where Anthony Weiner's privates got more coverage than any of the candidates themselves was just a distraction. I think this theory might hold water because of who I think is going to be the actual mayor. The guy that slipped in that nobody paid attention to, Bill DeBlasio. You need to meet him. Watch.
Just talk about the scandals. Here's what I'll tell you in the end. What New York will know about whoever is mayor is, well, it's not Anthony Weiner. It's a diversion because nobody is talking about anybody but Anthony Weiner. Talk about the scandals. It's working for the Democrats and the progressives.
One of the reasons Michael Bloomberg was able to get elected in New York City was because that every other candidate was an absolute disaster. I mean, if you think that Michael Bloomberg was bad, you have no idea. Tonight I want to introduce you to New York's next mayor, Bill DeBlasio. Technically, he is still the 2013 Democratic nominee for mayor, but does anybody really think New York is all of a sudden turn red and vote for the Republicans? No. But who is Bill DeBlasio? Well, he's the guy who makes Michael Bloomberg look like Sam Adams. While everybody was focused on Anthony Weiner's sexting, Bill DeBlasio came into the race, and nobody was looking. And only now we are finding how deep-seated his hatred really is for all of the principles that this country has always stood for. And in fact, I don't think he likes the country too much. In the past, he has supported violent attacks by the Sandinistas in South America. He joined a rebel group focused on sending them aid. He was raising money for the Soviets. This group had killed tens of thousands of people by 1990. And de Blasio has said about them that he developed an admiration for the Nicaraguan revolutionaries. They gave a new definition to democracy. They had a youthful energy, idealism mixed with a human ability and practicality. It's really inspirational. That's a quote. He also dreams of one day forging an alliance between Islam and the U.S., predicting, quote, Islam would soon be a dominant force in politics. That doesn't sound like a good idea. He also thinks that European socialist democratic model is the way of the future, stating in a recent interview that his own views represent a mix of admiration for the European social democratic movements, Mr. Roosevelt's New Deal, and liberation theology. He believes that this country, as it was founded, is rotten to its core, saying, quote, the government should be doing a lot more to help low-income workers and maintain higher tax rates, end quote. This is not coming from me or TheBlaze. All of this is coming from the New York Times. Now let me give you some history on Mr. DeBlasio, who's now being painted as a fresh-faced idealist of New York City. He was raised by two middle-class liberal activists in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He received his bachelor degree from NYU. He then studied Latin American history at Columbia, and upon graduation became a community organizer at an openly Marxist social justice group called Quixote Center. It once likened America's foreign policies to a policy of terrorism. So much for Quixote. The Sandinista National Liberation Front was a radical group from Nicaragua. When they lost power in 1990, de Blasio joined a group of ragtag activists made up of Democrats, Marxists, and anarchists who wanted to bring attention to this Nicaraguan group. The Sandinistas described themselves as democratic socialists, but they worked to undermine U.S. foreign policy. Reagan defined them a little differently. He said they were communist tyrants. De Blasio's group helped the Sandinistas blow up bank buildings, hold prisoners hostage, conspire to kill leaders, and organize violent protests in the streets. Their plan was to ignite a socialist revolution across Latin America that would overthrow the influence of capitalism and the West. They were backed by the Soviet Union and Cuba. DeBlasio even held his honeymoon in Cuba despite it being a violation of the United States travel ban to go there. Even after the Sandinista movement died, DeBlasio never renounced his involvement. Instead, he speaks admirably of the group, saying the values he fought for in South America are far from dead anywhere around the world. Boy, is he right about that. So how does a Marxist communist with a history of supporting terrorism get elected to the mayor of New York City? It's quite easy. I've said this for a while. Don't watch what they're doing. Don't watch this hand. Watch the other one. While we were all mesmerized by the fact that Anthony Weiner was still running and how his wife was willing to stick by his side all the way through this trial and ordeal, DeBlasio slipped into the #1 spot, and no one paid any attention. And now at the end of this year, he'll call Gracie Mansion his home. I urge you to pay attention. How did all this happen? Sideshows. That's what the progressive media is and wants us to focus on, sideshows. But what we should have really been asking is, what happens after the circus is over? And the answer is Bill DeBlasio, a violent revolutionary taking over New York City. And by the way, don't ask you to believe me. Do your own homework on this. In fact, you can read everything that I've just given you in the New York Times. It's the September 23rd issue of the New York Times. Page 8.